Yo guys, it's me Matrix here, coach of the Welsh Wailords, bringing you the Week 3 weekly recap of the UGA Johto Division. So, with me today, I have got the return of Masenko,
Hello, everyone.
I've got returning guest Oddball,
Hello.
and as always, Bryan.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So, this week was an interesting set of results as always. We've got quite some one-sided victories and a lot of RNG dependent games that are played out, which, to be fair, is expected in Pokemon. Um, we've
It's a
only
game we
got
play.
we've only got two games that finished on 2-1. We'll go into the fixtures one by one as we go along. So, what are your guys' overall thoughts as to how this last week has played out?
A lot of
Um,
RNG uh, on a lot of teams, and I think even though there are a lot of 0 and 2s, I think that some of them were closer, but there were also a whole bunch of clean sweeps this week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Masenko?
yeah, I think overall, um, a lot of it kind of went as expected, in my opinion, just in terms of like how I personally rank most of these teams. Um, I think that we can talk more about the sort of RNG dependent matches in a bit, since those I think are definitely worth talking about in terms of like the how much that RNG affected the match um,
Hmm.
results there. But yeah, so yeah, overall, I think like you look at most of these matches, and I think that at least I feel like they make a lot of sense in terms of where they stand.
Yeah, for sure. But so we can start our discussions with the first match, which was the London Lucarios versus the Cardiff Kamalas. Now, this is a match that wasn't recorded, but it was won 2-0 in the Kamalas' favour. And has anyone actually got any idea how that match went?
I can pull up the battle report real quick.
I
Um,
don't. I haven't been able to reach London Lucario since our battle.
yeah, I'm trying to think if I've spoken to Soda about it. Um,
Um,
It's like a pretty
it
clean sweep.
actually it was yeah it was 7-0 or like
yeah,
7-1. Or like the difference was +7 for the Cardiff Kamalas. It was pretty one-sided. It seems like
mhm.
Venusaur picked up a lot of kills with 6 and no deaths.
Wow.
Dragapult picking up the last 2 and being the only death on the team.
Wow, it's definitely a week that the Kamalas needed. It's their first
Yeah,
win, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
I believe so.
putting the Venusaur and Dragapult the pairs of the Dragapult with Clefairy, Venusaur, and I believe who's his son setter again, Lipard. Finally getting some good matches with that is quite a reward for the Kamalas. I believe when I spoke to Orange Soda, that he basically just made sure his Dragapult and the Venusaur were EV'd in a way that the pair of them would always prevent the Trick Room from going up. So whether that was EVing so that doubling into the Trick Room setter would kill guaranteed kills, or maybe just one of them like a Max Phantasm from Dragapult. I don't know. But it seemed to me that whatever they had planned, it was good enough to prevent Trick Room from setting once more. I mean, as in, yeah, the London Lucarios got that Tangrowth Fair pickup, didn't they, a couple weeks back? And
Mm.
Venusaur obviously ignores the redirection from
And it seems they
redirection.
only brought it one game this week.
I wouldn't be surprised if Dragapult was running safety goggles so that the Venusaur and Dragapult could be
Ah,
paired to basically KO his Trick Room setter before it could set, which
And the
is
Tangrowth is a
sorry.
really bad matchup into the Venusaur as well, just because it has only 50 special defense, and you could just sludge bomb it and just like
Yeah,
pretty much just wreck it.
exactly.
mhm.
And I think maybe that's what happened. I don't know. I never actually got to. We haven't been able to see the match, but we can only speculate. But I would imagine like a safety goggles Dragapult paired with a Venusaur is probably enough to KO the Trick Room setter, which is something I don't think the Lucaris have had to deal with yet. Actually, having their Trick Room setter knocked out, like it's always been a forced switch out so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as the Kamala said, like it's when team building against most teams, you've got to prepare for all these different modes. But for them, it was slightly easier. They could basically invest more time into combating that one mode because of it is just that one mode that the Lucaris are presenting to each team.
Mm-hmm. It's at this point it's only Trick Room, and I think maybe branching out beyond that would be kind of a good thing to think about.
Yeah,
we can talk about when we get to their match for next week and start thinking about trades that could be beneficial for them.
Yeah. So just a side note before we move on to the next matchups, what we're hoping to do in this is add our thoughts to how the season's gone for some of the teams up to this point, and maybe suggest some potential team member switches and trades and stuff to see what we think like some teams could be lacking in some areas, or if they are struggling. It's just our thoughts. It's like almost like a mid-season recap, but 3 weeks in. So we'll move on from the Kamalas. As I say, we didn't get to see the match. We can only presume how it went, but it seemed to be quite dominant for them. But we move on to the Orlando Oshawotts with you, Oddball, versus the South Croydon Saws. And going into this match, it was a matchup between two undefeated teams. And unfortunately, one prevailed. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
I have only bad things to say about it, but I don't know. I feel like this week was, or like specifically to how the games played out, it was almost all RNG because we both played well. You know, like we played well. We had somewhat control of the game. I surprised him a little, and I don't know. I think he mentioned that we both agreed that had luck not been absurd, it could have easily been a 2-0 the other way. I don't know. I'm kind of disappointed in the result, but happy to see that someone's still undefeated.
Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the prep that you made?
Yeah. I did a lot of specific prep, especially around Sceptile, which ended up just being straight up special Sceptile, which would have been fine because I was prepping for physical Sceptile with something like I forget, either Rock Slide or Stone Edge, whichever one. It was like I had this whole thing planned out with Max Strike to outspeed the Sceptile after 2 turns if it like tried to Oko, and it just ended up being I brought Max Strike for nothing when it could have been something like, I don't know, high horsepower that would have ensured a hit. But at the same time, if he had brought physical Sceptile, I wouldn't have won, you know? Like, I don't know. It was I think that what I brought could have won either way, but it would have been easier to win with specifically what he brought if I had changed something to like more consistent so I didn't have to use Iron Tail out of Max. And that's another thing. I brought Iron Tail on Crocodile for the defense boost and being super effective against a lot of things, including the Armaldo, which he did bring, but I never got to use it against that. I missed 2 game-winning moves. I got flinched to lose the game, because it was going to kill a Tornadus, and it just got flinched and then died next turn because Sceptile got sent in.
I believe that happened.
Oh, and
sorry.
And I had a low roll, or like a 50-50 roll that did not go in my favor at all, against an unmaxed Terrakion. which was not fun because if I had KO'd that, I would have had an extra turn of max and had been Moxie boosted a turn early.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So many things went wrong in that game. It's just sad to think about.
I believe the
Though,
first game was
you go
the
ahead.
one where the Irontail missed with the Crocodile against the Terrakion.
The Irontail missed, and then the Hydro Pump that would have won me the game also missed.
Yeah, and that was unfortunate because if you were what +2 with the Crocodile, unmaxed against the max Terrakion, I believe.
Oh yeah, it would have OK'd.
It was good.
Or, like,
Yeah, no, it
KO'd
was,
at
it
that
was
point.
100%. It was definitely good to KO.
For sure.
I remember
Yeah.
running the calcs, and it was unfortunate because the only other moves that you had on the Crocodile to hit it with was either not very effective or a Dark type move that would have just fully boosted the justified ability even more. So it
And
was
probably
definitely
wouldn't even
difficult.
killed it.
Exactly, it wouldn't have
Yeah.
KO'd.
And then the thing with missing Hydro Pump that was really sad was it was literally like game deciding last turn of the match. If I hit it, it KOs the Armaldo. If I miss it, I get KO'd by an X Scissor, and I missed it. So
I know. And then obviously the dark pulse flinch.
The Dark Pulse just
Tornadoes a game 2.
that
was
not only did I not expect Dark Pulse at all,
no,
I was not expecting the flinch. Like that just kind of crushed me inside a little bit.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, okay, if he misses a Leaf Storm from Sceptile, we can still be good. We can win.
Yeah.
But luck just didn't go my way on that either. I don't know.
But
it was good. It was like I feel like maybe if I had brought Trick Room, I might have been able to do something, but I just don't see what.
And from the sounds of it, though, it was an incredibly close match.
Oh yeah.
I think I might have the video linked in the description of this to the playlist where you can find it. And it was definitely one of those games that was, and I'm pretty sure we predicted it as a 50-50. It can go either way. It could be 6 times one way, 4 times another way. And it just an incredibly close matchup. And it's actually a real shame to see that it ended up being a 2-0 win for the South Korean Swords. I expected it to be at least 2-1. And it was down to RNG in both games that prevented you from getting out.
And not only that, but like horrible RNG happened at middle of the game, first game, and then very start of the game, the second game. And then even still, it was close and still got decided by yet another RNG roll later on in the game. And like, I think that if we played it 10 times, like I might have been able to take him off guard, you know, and maybe hit some crucial moves that I needed to, or try and play around what he brought. He said both games that I caught him off guard with the Crocodile, and I mean, I have to agree, it was pretty threatening. Didn't end up getting the KO, ended up missing an Iron Tail, so it really wasn't that threatening in the end.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with Pokemon, especially VGC, where you only have 4 Mons on your team for a given set. Each turn really, really matters, and if you miss or something happens like a flinch, right?
You just lose the turn.
The reason Fake Out is such a good move is because it's like you basically waste a turn, and like turns are so valuable to make bets the best use of.
Right.
And so, you know, it's kind of funny because like your guys' game kind of inspired me a little bit with my team building, just in general. Like with when I brought my Galarian Rapidash, which I didn't end up using in our match, I brought Smart Strike instead of the Iron Tail, which is 100% accurate.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so I was
that was the game-winning moral support right there.
So yeah, I was like, maybe I should pick some more accurate moves. Yet I missed anyway.
and that's something that I'm definitely considering as well going into week 4 and 5. Like, I can't stand missing moves. Like it lost me a potential 2-0 victory, you know.
And it's better to do some damage than to do no damage, right? So like if you have to pick a lower powered move sometimes in exchange for better
Mhm.
accuracy that might like pay off more times than it doesn't. I don't know. It's kind of
And
it's
like,
kind of
I don't know how things would have worked out with Rotom being +2. Like, looking back at it, maybe a Thunderbolt would have killed. But like you just don't have another option as a water type like move on Rotom Wash, which is
Yeah.
kind of disappointing as well.
Yeah.
I think I'm disappointed because I know I could have won that match, you know.
Yeah.
But also I think that he played well. He brought things he needed to bring. Granted, I like prepared for them, but he had also prepared kind of for what I brought because like I don't think people normally bring Dark Pulse on Tornadus, so maybe he had a plan there against Musharna or something.
It's definitely one of its more uncommon moves, so I'd expect Tornadus to run. But more likely
Yeah.
for like a draft match for coverage or something, yeah.
Right. I don't know. It saddens me to watch again, but I would have to recommend you watch it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a shame, but it was always going to be a case that one of the undefeated teams was going to come out on top there, and I
And
suppose this
granted,
week,
if I meet him again in playoffs at some point, like I'm ready for, second set.
yeah,
And I think
sure.
that's a really good point is like both of you are very, very, very good teams. Like it's not like you lost to some like bottom of the tier list team, right? Or bottom of the standings
Right.
team and like just kind of got screwed over. It's like this was going to be a hard match anyway, and he could have just as easily won a 2-0, without the hacks, and just like you could have won a 2-0 without the hacks. Like you both have such good teams, it's really hard to say like you know with confidence who would win that match, and you could see it going anyway.
Well,
So
I mean, in those two specific matches, there were like very specific pieces of RNG that specifically lost me the game.
Yeah,
But like
absolutely.
going into like maybe a 5-game or 6-game total sort of set, like yeah, there are ways that maybe Terrakion beat up. I don't know if he ended up bringing that because I only saw Surf. Like maybe something like that could have gone off, and I wouldn't have been able to deal with it well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess I'm just saying like I'm almost like I'm almost happy for you that this was like one of the best teams in the league to kind of lose to, right? Like you wouldn't
Yeah.
want that loss to be against someone who would be otherwise like an easier win for you when it comes to your final score, right? Like if any week was the week to lose, it could have been one of them would have been this week, right? And like
Mhm.
you can walk away with that feeling like you can win future matches, especially since you showed such a strong showing against him, right?
Yeah. And I think that's another thing. Like, even though I lost, that's currently the #1 ranked team in the league, and I could have beat him, and that's kind of a little push that even though, like, yeah, things didn't go my way this time, like, I don't know, maybe I can work my way up back to the top and either beat him in playoffs or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's week 3, still loads
Yeah.
of room for things for shifting
sure.
positions and stuff. So
Mhm.
I'm sure you'll meet him again soon. But yeah,
Yeah.
disappointing loss, but sometimes it's what we got to take.
Mhm.
From there, we move on to the Crummock Colossals versus the Charlotte Beedrills. Bryan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So you won 2-0 this week, didn't you? Do you want to give us some thoughts about that?
Sure. So, Crimmage Colossals, or Kremik, I don't know, roast me in the
Crummock.
comments for my terrible pronunciation. But basically, they have the team that has a lot of pairings, but once you get through those pairings, there's really not much he can do after that. So, originally my plan was Trick Room because he's got a lot of really fast mons, and I have a lot of really good slow mons, but he's also got that Mudsdale, which actually undersped my mons in Trick Room. So I kind of had to fake the Trick Room and go with the Sandstream
Yeah, you went with
Rush
this.
Excadrill.
Yeah.
Because originally I thought that ground moves were ground moves resisted steel, but they don't. So I just got a lot of heavy damage off like steel spikes, and then obviously my addition of Volcarona also did really good. I was able to Giga Drain into the weakness policy Mudsdale for most of the damage.
And obviously you had that Will-O-Wisp as well, and the redirection, which was pretty handy this week.
Yeah, and another set where I didn't Dynamax to win. So I wonder how common that's going to be.
I remember talking to Dave after the matchup, and he was saying about how he kind of regretted bringing the weakness policy Grookey hitting Mudsdale with the weakness policy with a Grassy Glide. He kind of wished he had put more thought in and brought Assault Vest Mudsdale in place of. And I think the reason for that is that he could have relied a bit more heavily on the Mudsdale setting it up and then just body pressing afterwards, and it could do some damage. But again, it was going to be a hard. Your Excadrill Sand mode, it was still doing damage to him regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked this match. I liked watching it a lot. I think definitely the Volcarona kind of was the star player in my eyes. It kind of really showed that how much you could do with an awesome support redirection user, right? Like you can just kind of sit there with Bronzong and like shoot your gyro balls over and over and just kind of like chip them, and like they can't really do a whole lot against that, right? So I personally think that I thought it was really good prep on your end, Bryan. So and good control over the match. You showed a lot of confidence in controlling the flow of the game, and you showed some mastery over your team, which I think is something that we should start to be getting to by week 3. You know, being able to feel comfortable on your team and knowing how they do it, how they play their role, like compared to your other members of the team.
Right.
And I really, really liked how Bronzong was kind of the star of the show in that game 1.
Yeah.
He was just able to sit there, take hits here and there, and it was just did a lot of the carrying, I believe.
Yes, it did most of the kills. It killed Grookey with Gyro Ball, and then it KO'd the Tauros after a close combat defense drop.
Yeah.
And a little bit of chip.
And let's not take the limelight off the little monkey. The monkey managed to pick up a KO.
On a crit, okay? It was a crit. It was a 1 in 16 chance to crit. And I don't even think it was already knocked off. So I don't even think that was even with the boost.
But the Grookey is out for blood.
It is out for blood.
I think it'll be great watching that little monkey try and pick up some more KOs in the future weeks.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun.
And then the game 2, I kind of switched things up good. I didn't bring the Bronzong, but that was I was confused on the brings on that one. It was 3 supports and Tauros. So I was just like, based on what the brings were, that was sort of more in my favor. I thought maybe if he had maybe even 2 supports and 2 attacks instead of 3 supports and Tauros. I mean, I said in the video that he messaged me and was like, so feel free to crit my Tauros, because it was running Anger Point, and I'd already KO'd the Frostlass before it could get in.
Yeah. I think I remember looking at the prep after the matches, and I felt like you had the more dominant position, just based on the match preps that you both brought. You were always able to kind of navigate his weakness policy Mudsdale with having that Volcarona with a burn. You were able to redirect the Frostlass's Frost Breath which breaks the anger point on Tauros, and that again is going back to what Masenko said, was why Volcarona was so good this week. And aside from that, the lead that you did, at least in game one, I think you did it in game two as well, is the Volcarona Excadrill. And what that does is that it kind of forces the opponent to think, what does he want to do? You're going to either redirect with the Volcarona to stop the Frost Breath crit, boosting the anger point, or he tries to set Tailwind and to try and outspeed you if he brought Fletch if he had brought Fletchinder first. He did bring it though, didn't he, to the match? Like game preview. Yeah, and if you wanted to lead Tailwind to try and get the speed up on Mudsdale, Tauros or something beforehand, then you can just switch that Volcarona out, bring Gigalith in, Excadrill now outspeeds, and it's another issue. Excadrill will be outspeeding Tauros. So I think that lead was always a good answer to what he had. Again, if he had brought the Colossal, which he didn't actually bring up to the match, you still had the mons that could answer that by having that Sandstream Gigalith with Sandrush Excadrill to outspeed anything he had on his team to basically just one-shot the Colossal. So I think what you had...
Sorry.
Sorry.
Not to mention that that lead in particular, you also have to be, as the opponent, very careful of who you target, right? Because like he could be doing the redirection, but obviously he could switch into Gigalith, and then one other thing to consider is that Excadrill gets Swords Dance, so like you could always redirect Swords Dance, and like now that Excadrill is popping off and just one-shotting everything. So like you have three different options. You can go aggro, you can go control, or you could go setup, right? With that lead, and so it's kind of a rock paper scissors almost, and you got to be really you have to have a good prepared lead against that in order to counter it.
Yeah. Basically, your lead was very versatile, and it's kind of the prep you needed against a team that could have three different modes. Something that you were always in a position, or in the best position you could be, to try and counter whatever he brought. So I thought it was a good watch, good execution of your game plan.
Agreed.
A very calm execution of my game plan.
He's done.
As discussed, we've discussed outside of the there's like obviously every game plan, every match that anyone plays, there's always going to be little improvements you can make. And even though this game was a clear 2-0 win, there's still things that you can take away from both sides and be like, oh yes, I can do this better and do that. And I think that's important for every team. You can play a brilliant game, but there's always something that you can learn from. And I think both teams will come away from this and be like, use this opportunity to learn and plan better and develop more as a battler.
Agreed. You want to move on now?
Yep.
To BLG versus H/.
Yeah, so preface on this one, it was a bit of a weird win. The Dark Lord Greninjas played the Aggie/Blades, and they played the first game. I thought the Dark Lord Greninjas played really well that first game. But what happened is that the Aggie/Blades ended up disconnecting in game two, and at the collective moderators of the UGA, basically decided to award the win to the Dark Lord Greninjas, in part because of it was unable to really say who could have won coming out, but more of a penalty for the fact that the Aegislash Blades had a disconnect week 1, they'd had a connection issues week 2, and now week 3 we're getting to, and they're still having these issues, and it's just a slight breach of some of the rules that we have in place. So the second set win was given to the Dark Lord Greninjas, and I still think it was a fair give to give that win because the Greninjas had played well game 1. I think they were in a position to win game 2 as well. So, has anyone actually seen the game?
I looked at the clip where the disconnect was, but I didn't see anything other than that, so I can't really say.
So, what's interesting about this matchup is that it's basically the matchup of the 2 rain teams of the league. You've got Politoed, Kingdra, Regieleki, Aegislash, all that type on one team for the Aegislash Blades. And then on the other side, we've got Pelipper. I think he has Poliwrath, I can't remember. And Kartana. And basically, I think we said in the last week's review that this was, in my opinion, a more favourable matchup for the Dark Lord Greninjas, and that's because of the Grimmsnarl and Fake Out and Prankster, and having Aegislash Kartana if he could fit that Kartana into a favourable position where it wasn't faced by the opponent's fire types, the Kartana could really do work, and that's exactly what happened. The Kartana was a Assault Vest, which, funnily enough, still struggles to take a hit from a overheat Litten in rain. So that blows my mind. It just proves how specially weak a Kartana is.
Something to keep in mind for my next week.
Yeah, like you've got to be so. It dies to any special fire type move. To be honest, even if it's Assault Vest, it will die. When it's maxed, it can take about 50% damage from over 50% damage from a Litten's overheat, uninvested, and I just can't get over it. I know Kartana is especially weak, but my God, when I was just giving him some suggestions, did I think it was that bad? No. But saying that, he positioned the Kartana really well. I think he led it in game 1, switched it out, and ended up having it set up for an end game where it was able to just basically sweep through the opponent's team quite nicely with the attack boosts and being quite fast. So the actual game itself is a little bit unclear. Like, I can't remember all the details, but I remember Kartana being a star player for the Dark Lord Greninjas that week, and he just, as I say, played it really well.
Yeah, I think Dark Lords have a very strong chance of sort of being I guess no pun intended, but like a dark horse in this league.
Intend your puns, mate, Masenko. Intend your puns.
Man, I can't help it. It's just my inner dad is coming out. But yeah, so yeah, like as a dark horse candidate, I think like he could definitely make top cut by the end of the season. If he continues to play as well as he did this match.
He's the 6th seed in the 3rd week for a reason. So
yeah,
there's no reason to underestimate his abilities as a battler, even as a new player.
Yeah, he's my current number 5, and just in terms of the like my calculations and scoring that I do.
And even though there was the disconnect, that game 2, I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember everything, but he basically got in a position where he was 2 and 2. The Dark Lord Greninjas only had 2 mons left. I think he had Kartana, which was maxed, and I don't remember what the support was. It might have been Piloswine. It was Piloswine. He had Piloswine, and he was against the opponent, which still had 4 mons. I think he'd just taken out a mon. and was about to take out another when the disconnect happened. So it was about to turn from a 2 versus 4 to a 2 versus 3 to a 2 versus 2. And I think the Kartana was still in a position where the incoming mode was Kingdra and Politoad in the back. And I still think the Kartana was in a position where maxed, it could take any attack that the Kingdra dealt, even with the assault vest, even though it was in rain. And still basically with the attack boosts, one shot or close to one shot in the Kingdra, and the Pallaswine was just there to just, I don't know, do Pallaswiney things. But I still think there was this position where he could bring it back. He could, so
Yeah.
I guess we'll never be able to know, but it was nice because of it's a second win for the Dark Lords. So
Yeah, and we'll see how well he does going forward too. I mean, I'm against him next week. It'll be a fun matchup, I think. I'm definitely excited for it.
So moving on, we have the Merseyside Marowaks versus the Southeast Luxrays. This was the last match to be played of week 3, and may I just say, what a match it was!
Yeah,
I really enjoyed watching this match.
Fantastic match by our friend Bioptic.
Yes, and such a shame for Ancient Jedi and the Merseyside Marowaks.
yeah,
I think we can all agree that in game 1, to paint the picture, they have a +5 Glastrier, +5 attacking Glastrier, +2 in defense, and +1 in Spedef on the field. Speed swapped with Rabombi, so it's outspeeding basically anything the Southeast Luxrays have on his team that's left, and was doing over half damage to a maxed Center Scorch.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Merseyside Marowaks were in a great position, in my opinion. He had that much stat boost, and if he really wanted to, the following turn he could pull and puff with the Rabombi, get it back up to health. And honestly, the Luxrays were never going to be able to beat that, except for one crit, one well-timed max flare crit from the Center Scorch. Now, I did the calcs afterwards, and the Glastrier was sitting at about 57% on their health. A max flare from the Center Scorch that he brought was at maximum doing 53%. That Glastrier was never going down to a hit. But with the crit
totally mattered.
Even if the Glastrier was at full health, it was dying. It would have done somewhere between 110 and 120%.
Yeah.
That crit was well timed. And yes, one could argue that instead of speed swapping on that turn, he could have got Ancient Jedi could have gone for a pollen puff to make sure that the Center Scorch couldn't do any more damage, because of in case it had like charcoal or something that could have given it that extra damage. But ultimately, it did not matter. It was a shame. The crit happened, and if not for that crit, I think the Ancient Jedi would have definitely took home the win there.
Yeah, at least in that game 1, I think
yes,
it was
in game 1, definitely. Game 2, however, was a different story, as you were about to say. I think the Southeast Luxrays definitely had a better control of the game that game 2.
And I think
interesting thing too is Glastrier didn't get brought game 2.
Yeah, and I think the issue there was that Ancient Jedi got a little bit spooked to bring Glastrier game 2, thanks to that Glastrier crit. I think it just kind of did a mental blip, like you're like, oh, my plan didn't work, the Glastrier got hurt, or the Center Scorch is an issue. And I think he just got spooked a little bit into bringing that Glastrier for game 2. Because he didn't even bring Porygon either.
Kind of got inside his own head about it.
Exactly. And I think because he was in such a good position and was basically just, the whole game just flipped. He was in such a good position, high defenses, high attack, kind of dominating off the get-go. And then that one crit just turned that game on its head.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously I think it is a bit of a mistake to bring the Kaparaja G Max over the Glastrier there.
For sure.
Uh,
I
yeah,
agree.
it's a little rough, but I mean, obviously you can see that the Merseyside Marowak's team has a very scary mode with that Glastrier.
Mhm.
Crits aside, uh, that's always you gotta respect the hell out of Glastrier. It's a reason that it was meta in the sort of format that we were playing in when that was the series 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so strong, so tanky,
Yes.
and is a really good offensive typing in the form of ice, and kind of makes up for all the weaknesses that ice has by being so bulky and having so many options to support it.
Yeah. It's got like base 130 defense, 110 special defense, and it has both access to both max moves that just keep boosting its defenses even more.
Exactly.
And I think it would have been interesting to see a third game between these two. I think the Southeast Lux Rays definitely dominated the second game, and their lead was actually really good for a good answer to what the Marowaks brought game one, which was that Pangoro bullet punch weakness policy breaking on Glastrier. Plus, it had coaching. It had wide guard for the not wide guard, quick guard, wasn't it, for the Rillaboom. And
Yeah.
I thought the way that Bioptic brought Drifblim for game two was great. I thought Drifblim was such a good mon for this game. Like, it gets Will-O-Wisp, it gets Strength Sap, which he brought, and Tailwind to make sure he was outspeeding the speed swap, which obviously is what he was leaning into. The Marowaks, uh, not bringing that Porygon, but he also had answers for that Porygon with the Imprison Trick Room Meowstick. So
And superpower Rillaboom and stuff like that too.
Exactly.
Just to get that big damage in.
And what made it so much more of a dominating win is that I know Bioptic didn't intend to do this on one of the switch-ins. He did on the second, but there was two times Jedi swapped out. I think he swapped in he did similar to what I've done, which we'll talk in a minute. He swapped out one of his mons into Copperaja Assault Vest, and basically got hit by a superpower off Rillaboom. That's it. He swapped out Pangoro into Assault Vest
Super
Copperaja,
unfortunate.
and it took like half its health off. And then he proceeded to max that mon later in mid game, and that was example one. Example two was when I think Aurasphere, or it might have actually been Aurasphere Chloritza that did that damage. And yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It was
Aurasphere.
It was Aurasphere Chloritza, which is why it surprised me that it didn't KO. That's how I knew it was Assault Vest. And then he also Aurasphered into the Ribombi because the Chloritza was choice scarfed, so it was stuck using it anyway. Went to take the KO on the Ribombi, and Jedi swapped Ribombi out into Pangoro, and it just one-shot Pangoro.
Yep.
And I think that was quite a safe play that Bioptic did. He knew that the Ribombi was going to die there if he went with that attack of Aurasphere. If he swapped the Ribombi out, well, it's into Pangoro. It's going to take the KO anyway. So I thought that was two good prediction turns for him.
Does anyone else want to say anything about this match?
Don't I hear me?
Fine.
Yep.
I think I've spoken a lot about that match, to be fair. But
Yeah. Oddball, did you want to speak?
I actually didn't watch too much into this match, so I don't have much else to say.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I thought he could have not Dynamaxed in game two and still would have picked up the KO with that high horsepower.
Yeah.
Into so I was a little sad that he missed out on joining the win without Dynamaxing club that I started.
It's definitely the safe play though, to not high horsepower has a chance to miss, doesn't it?
He was up
And
like 4-0, wasn't he?
I know,
mean,
I
it was-
know, but like, if you want to be able to take them KOs, like, there's no reason not to. I think it was fine doing the Dynamax there. You
I
might
just,
just want to
I thought-
rack up the
I thought it
KOs
was
on the
funny.
Center Scorch.
I thought I was just, I just like my win without Dynamaxing club that I started, so I was hoping you could join it, but oh well.
I'm sure
And
we'll
one
all do our best to join it eventually.
It's just me and Matrix right now, I think. Not club. It's just me and Matrix.
One final thing I will say about that match is that we said from basically the get-go in a draft that Center Scorch actually matches up really well against Glacier.
Yep.
Mhm.
And yes, there was a crit, but that was against a +2 Glacier. So it did show that the Center Scorch had some worth in this type of matchup.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, we move on to the grudge match. That is Welsh Wailords versus the Drowsy Dracozolt. And unfortunately, I take
Nothing really
my first loss of the
happened. We
season.
could just move
Sorry?
on. Nothing really happened in this match. We could just probably move on to the next one.
Oof.
Yeah.
So much happened. It was an intense game. It was like there was never really a dull turn. It was always like every turn mattered. It's going back to what we were talking about at the start of this week's podcast type thing.
Yeah.
Every
Absolutely.
turn that was played in this match had an impact for the overall match and how it went.
Mhm.
I think game one, hats off, you completely dominated that. I had basically not given up, but decided to play them game out in game one and then start figuring out what am I going to do for game two. You were complete. You were complete control. You were switching out on the mons, predicting what attacks I was going to be where I was going to be attacking. Unfortunately, and this is a bad omen from the get go. I used energy ball with my Aromatisse to proc my weakness policy on my Primarina. I was outside a trick room, and this I got a sped F drop on my own mon. Which basically meant I was liable to being one shot by any your Venusaur, which I'd EV'd that it wouldn't be one shot by a Venusaur.
Right.
So that was
Took
fun.
advantage of that. But even then, I think
I
Venusaur.
think you definitely would have won the match. You definitely would have won the game.
Yeah.
But it was just like it was a bad omen. I will say
Yeah.
I should probably mention the tech that you brought against me. So game one, turn one, you led Kangaskhan and who was it?
Kangaskhan and Ninetales.
Kangaskhan and Ninetales, and I led Ninetales and Aromatisse. My Ninetales was the faster one, so you got your sunny day, you got your drought up, and I'm sat there going, "What's he going to do? What is this lead?" I'm thinking, you got fake out on Kangaskhan maybe, and you're probably going to fake out my Aromatisse. This is my thoughts to try and prevent the trick room. And I'm like, that's fair. That's fair. I'm focus sashed on the Ninetales. I'm not worried about your Ninetales doing overheat or whatever, flamethrower or attacking it. So I'm sat there going, and I have Roar on my Ninetales Alola. And I'm thinking, do I roar out the Kangaskhan here? Do I, or what? What should I do? And I was going to, and I thought, no, he's going to fake me out. I can just get Trick Room up the next turn. So instead, I go for the Moonblast into the Ninetales. Now, little did I know that as soon as the animation started and your Ninetales moved first, I went, he's not using Fake Out. What's he doing? Well, how's he going to stop my Trick Room? Oh, no. He's brought one of them stupid force switch out moves. We get to it, and you reveal to me Circle Throw. And I'm like, yep, GG, game one over.
You know what's really, really funny is something I never revealed until afterwards when we were talking about it more is I also had Roar on my Ninetales as well.
Yeah. So it could have been a turn of negative priorities all happening at once there. That would have been funny.
Yeah.
So you Circle Throw my Aromatisse out, brings in my Primarina, and at this point I'm like right on the back foot. Just trying to I could have maxed a Primarina there, getting early max to try and start getting some momentum back, but it was difficult. You put me in a difficult position. You'd got my Ninetales down to Sash, so it swapped out. I think I made some all right plays, but I think that first turn circle throw really threw me through a loop to begin with. Especially, it's a good piece of tech, especially against a mon like Aromatisse that is bulky enough to take most hits to not be KO'd in 2 hits. It's got its ability, Aroma Veil, which prevents being taunted. Like, you kind of left with 3 options to prevent a Trick Room, which is Imprison Trick Room, which I expected from your Rapidash, which you didn't actually bring. Fake Out, which you didn't bring. And then the lesser known but rising in popularity within this league, which is a forced switch out of the Trick Room setter.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it's
I'd like to
been
take
used
credit
pretty much
for
every
that.
Trick Room matchup.
Yeah.
I'd like to take credit for starting the forcing out of Trick Room. I'd like to take credit for that. Thank you very much.
So, game 2, you win game 1 easily, 3-0. That's fair. That's respect. That you completely dominated me there. Game 2, I'm thinking, okay, I'll lead the same again because I've got a plan. I know how I'm going to stop your circle throw because I hadn't revealed that I've got Raw on Ninetales or lower, and that now Raw and Circle Throw are both negative priority moves of -6, which both move before Trick Room -7. But because of my Ninetales is the faster one, my Raw would move before your Circle Throw. So my idea was to force out the mon of yours that forces mine out, which in reality was a pretty good idea, I think. However, you kind of predicted that I would do something when you saw that same lead, didn't you?
Exactly. And so what I did is I didn't know it would be particularly roar on the Ninetales, but I did think that the Aromatisse maybe would have protected or had some sort of like other move that it would go for to try to like or maybe you're doing like a cheeky switch in on something, who knows. So instead of circle throwing, I just went overheat into the Ninetales and then rock slide to pick up the kill and to try to
Flinch.
chip the aroma, maybe get a flinch.
Yeah. So this is where the game went, oh, for God's sakes, and I thought I'd lost again already off turn 1 because you got the KO on the Ninetales, which I wasn't expecting you to use Rock Slide there. So I'd use a negative priority move, otherwise Ninetales would have been going first. But it's not like in that type of lead situation, Ninetales could really offer much because I couldn't get a Aurora Veil up. I couldn't really hit anything on your side for decent damage with Moonblast or Blizzard. And so Raw really was the best choice and really would have been the better choice for me to use game 1 just to ensure that I'd be okay. However, if I had used Raw in that game 1 and you were actually fake out Kangaskhan, well, then I'm just giving you a free reset onto your Kangaskhan for a later fake out again.
Right.
So it was difficult. Like knowing what you brought, yeah, Raw would have been a better move, but not knowing what you brought, and again, I still don't know that you don't have fake out. I could have brought Fungus because I had Fungus, and I could have brought Rage Powder Fungus because you didn't even have safety goggles, did you?
No, but I did have a plan for that, and that's what the double switch out moves were for the Fungus, because I could just target into the Fungus with my Ninetales and then circle throw it with the Kangaskhan into your Aromatisse, and
Exactly.
easy.
So,
and if you protect one of them, or whatever, like it doesn't matter, right? Because next turn I can just go for the kill onto whoever, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I still think what I did was the right play, but you just had the means to circumvent it. And now the rock slide, it hit my Aromatisse, it crit me, it flinched me. The crit didn't matter, the crit was nothing, but it was just like, add salt to the wound,
Yeah, a little
She
bit.
flinched me. I was like, you crit me. I was like, okay, you crit me. Just don't flinch me. And it's like, oh, for God's sakes. Had to flinch there. Second game, I didn't get the trick room up. And I'm like, this isn't going well. Long story short, We play the game out. I max Metagross, you max Zapdos. Managed to get it to my AV Metagross. Wasn't worried about your Zapdos. End of the game. I misplayed. I shouldn't have gone for the Protect. I think I went for a Protect, didn't I, on one of the mons?
Yeah, on your
And
Primarina at one point, I had my lone Venusaur who was just sitting there in front of your Aroma and your not your Ninetales, your Aroma and your Primarina.
yeah,
You thought, hey, you know what? Let's just secure this game. Protect the Primarina. I'm going to set up Trick Room.
yeah.
But unfortunately, the Aromatisse wasn't as bulky as you at least initially thought, or maybe I
Think
put more damage into my Venusaur than you'd initially thought, and the Sludge Bomb just picked up the kill onto the Aromatisse.
yeah. I think initially when I made my prep, Aromatisse was Cassibia Berry, which is the poison one.
Mhm.
And I think I had just mixed up my calcs a little bit. I think it was still I think it was just below the minimum range for it surviving off
Right.
that Sludge Bomb with the amount of damage it's taken. I think it just taken that little bit too much damage to be able to take a Sludge Bomb. And for all I know, and I haven't checked because there's no point, but for all I know, it could have been a roll. But you were Life Orb and you were modest, so I think that's pushing it. I think it was a guaranteed KO, but I think I just made a slight mistake in judgment. It would have been better there to just got the damage because there's no way you were gonna. In hindsight, it was more likely you were going to go for the Trick Room setter, expecting me to use Trick Room and Protect.
Right.
So it was a good call on your part, but unfortunately, as we both know, where you should have taken the game, and I expected, honestly, I'd given up at that. I'd not given up, but I'd accepted defeat at that point. And the
Right.
Leaf Storm comes out, and it misses.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
And allowed my Primarina to get that KO for.
But here's the
securing
thing. So obviously, misses suck, and I was kind of excited
Tell
to
you
go to
about that tenfold.
Yeah, Oddball knows that misses definitely suck. But I was ready for a game 3. I think I had a lot of takeaways from game 2 as well for that game 3, which obviously I guess we'll get into it, but I think the game 3 was fairly dominant on your end. But I do think that I made a couple of key changes and played to a specific game plan that did help me position myself to win when making use of the RNG that benefited me, which was specifically 2 things. The first was the Klefki Brain. I think having screens on my side ended up being incredibly helpful against a lot of the damage that you were putting out. And I also think just understanding the win condition of denying you the ability to max the Metagross, because in game 2, the Metagross was an enormous menace for me. And although I eventually kind of just chipped it down with some max flares and sucker punch and stuff like that, it was like the fact that I couldn't kill it quickly put me in a position where it was Venusaur against the world, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the play that I made in game 3, where I max Flare plus a Sunny Day into the slot that I think Metagross is coming out, ends up being a really, 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 really important turn for me. Despite the fact that, obviously the RNG was, a little bit on my side, or I
So
guess a lot on my side in that game.
just to basically line out how the game was for game 3. Obviously, game 2 we just come off, and it was just I was lucky to get into a game 3, but I was playing on the back foot of game 2 a lot. In my game 1 and 2 a lot from that first 2 turns. Game 3, there's only 2 differences between the 2 teams. You brought Klefki in place of Ninetales, didn't you?
Yes.
And
yes.
I led Mienshao in place of my Ninetales. So we both swapped out the Ninetales. And the Klefki was definitely vital for that match for the win, because if you didn't have them screen support, it definitely would have been a stronger match for me.
And Ninetales wasn't going to be doing much against your max Primarina anyway.
Mm.
So
But I was actually slightly worried that you would be maxing that Ninetales at one point against the Metagross.
yeah.
So
Well, yeah. Go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that's basically the way the game planned out is that some smart switches from your end and some not very smart switches from my end. Basically, Mian Xiao, the start of the bad RNG was Mian Xiao went for the close combat into your Kangaskhan, revealing it was Choppleberry to begin with. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I didn't know what item it was, but I wasn't sure if it was safety goggles, so you could do the circle throw. I was like, yep, typical, you would be Choppleberry. Gets the I double in to the Kangaskhan. You'd already prevented me from using Trick Room with Aromatisse by forcing it switched out. I really wished it had switched to Metagross. It's a 50-50. And if it switched to Metagross, I would have been in such a good position. And honestly, looking back at it, I probably should have just led and just ditched the Trick Room mode. I should have just led Mian Xiao and Kangaskhan. Mian Xiao and Metagross.
Yeah,
Because-
probably. It really depends, though. I think my Kanga was definitely geared to deal with it with that sucker punch a little bit.
Yeah, but then like coaching Mian Xiao with a max steel spike Metagross, you've got a +2 defense Metagross, and then the sucker punches start really doing nothing.
That would have been a little rough for me.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I'm only just thinking about this now. I should have changed my game plan a little bit, but so you switch out the Kangaskhan, I close combat into the slot that comes in, Zapdos. And yeah, okay, it's a resisted move. It gets a bit of chip on your Assault Vest Zapdos. But what was bad for me in the end is that it basically activated static, 30% chance to paralyze. And so I stupidly, because of I'm at like -2 special defense, I think I'm going to swap out my Mian Xiao here, preserve it. I can get fake out pressure later. That's a play I really regret. Because I brought him a Metagross, and you predicted it. This is when you got the Max Flare, Sunny Day Klefki into Max Flare Zapdos.
Yeah.
And basically, if I wasn't Assault Vest Metagross, that was a dead Metagross.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I
honestly,
kind of had no other really play there, I think. Like no other really proactive play there, just because
I'd
at
already
that
set Trick Room.
I couldn't stop the Trick Room. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, he has this kind of like useless Mian Xiao on the field. He probably wants to reset for fake out. And he probably wants to position his Metagross to make full use of the Trick Room turns. So it seemed like a safe play. Ultimately, you could have switched into Primarina, but I think that who knows, that might have been a better switch in. I don't know, because then I could just max Lightning, do stuff like that.
Mhm.
So it really depends.
Yeah.
It was an unsafe switch. I think Carmine post game mentioned something along the lines of just sacking the Mian
Yeah.
Xiao at that
And
point,
I
and
completely
wasting.
agree. I should have sat the Mian Xiao because then I would have got a free switch. I set Trick Room that turn. I would have got a free switch into the Metagross. And I think I was just worried that you would have targeted the Aromatisse there to try and maybe deny Trick Room by just one-shotting it or something. And I know Aromatisse is bulky, but if you had Metal Sound on Klefki, because I still didn't know what that fourth move was, and it hits, it would have KO'd the Aromatisse. So
Yeah, definitely.
so this is what was going through my head, and I did the switch. I shouldn't have. Metagross was then basically not non-usable for the rest of the match, and I managed to get an Ice Punch off into Zapdos and chip it a little bit, but nothing major, especially behind a Reflect. And the Klefki goes and crits the Aromatisse with Flash Cannon through Light Screen. That was fun.
That was fun, yeah.
That was it wasn't a game changing. I'm not bothered. That's a crit that happens type thing. But it's really, you're gonna do this to me? I just set Light Screen. You crit through it. All right. But then we fast forward from here and we get to the final few turns. We've got my Primarina, which was the mon I had to max, and it's out of max. We've got I think it was Aromatisse, and I had Mienshao in the back. Aromatisse dies, Mienshao's on the field, and it's this crucial turn where you've got Kangaskhan and Venusaur. Are we inside Trick Room at this point or outside? We're outside.
I think we're inside Trick Room. Because maybe not. Trying to think. No, I think the Trick Room had just ended. Potentially. I'd have to rewatch. I don't think it was super relevant.
No, it doesn't really matter. But basically, how the turn of events happened. You used Helping Hand with Kangaskhan into your Venusaur because you're thinking Kangaskhan's going to be going down this turn most likely. Let's get a Helping Hand off whilst it's still on the field, correct?
Yeah, basically.
You target my Primarina, which is still behind a light screen, and you Sludge Bomb into the Primarina, thinking that it's a 100% accuracy move that will at least hit it and not run the risk of missing like the Leaf Storm did. And you actually expected it to be able to KO the Primarina.
Yeah, just super effective and stuff like that.
Yeah, but luckily I was running a lot of special bulk on my Primarina this week to deal with your specially offensive team. So Primarina survives. It did get hit by a max roll Sludge Bomb. It survives. But the unfortunate thing is it got poisoned on a 10% roll.
Yeah.
And I think that's what kind of sealed the final nail in the coffin for that game for me. Because I could see how that game's going to end out there. I close combated the Kangaskhan and got rid of it, expecting it. And I knew what you were going to do. I knew the next turn, you're just going to protect. Why wouldn't you? When the Primarina hit the Venusaur, it didn't even KO. +2 Primarina got you to what? 20%?
Yeah, like around 20%. I was still really young.
20%. Hail chip as well. Hail ended, and you protect Stall from the poison, which is fair. That's what you do. Primarina goes down, and then it's a paralyzed Mienshao versus a Venusaur. And this is where the other static from earlier was crucial, because if it wasn't paralyzed, I would be outspeeding that Venusaur, and a close combat KOs from that range.
Yep.
So yeah, a lot of status RNG hacks, a few flinches in a game, a miss in a game. I think basically this was just a long-winded way of saying it was incredibly close.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think full credit to Oddball for helping me out with my prep as well. I think like there was a few things there. I think just as a player, something that I kind of got like Oddball helped me with this week is I tend to overthink a lot of what I'm bringing and like come up with weird things that don't necessarily always.
I think one of the first things I told you this week when you first showed me like your like first draft of how we beat Matrix, I was like, you have to keep it simple, like even if it is something that's frequently used and it's like the sort of main set for a lot of mons, like it's there for a reason. It's the best set for a reason in the most part. And things like just running simple moves on Venusaur, like I mean it showed off,
Yeah, definitely.
And even things with like Kangaskhan, like you originally didn't have a very good attacking move like at all. You had Rock Tomb, and then that's it.
Sucker Punch,
like Fake Out and Rock Tomb. Yeah, and like Sucker Punch wasn't. I don't even think Sucker Punch was in your first iteration, and then it changed to Crunch, and then I guess you changed it to Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
But like, I thought I was happy to help you this week because I think that sort of one thing that you've learned here is that like you don't have to always do something like that
Crazy.
will
Unexpected.
totally like that will totally catch them off guard. and like sometimes the best surprise is just doing the things you expect, you know.
Yeah, and I think it was a good mix too, because even with I think the mixture of my prep with your advice was something that came out to be even more surprising, which is like good, just like really good tech, right? Like the Zapdos with the assault vest. I just
Yes, yeah.
like honestly, like that was such a star player. Like I know the Zapdos kind of just sat there, didn't get many kills, but like that thing was so bulky. Like it took max Hailstorm from a +2 Primarina. Obviously it was behind Light Screen, but like it survives that. It survived a Metagross Ice Punch.
It survived a max hailstorm on a switch, max water move on a switching, and that's when I was like, this.
Well, that was in Sun. That was also in Sun.
Yeah, but it took it was also +2, and I was like, this took a hit.
And
This is definitely going to be a bit bulky.
I think that's something that speaks to your ability as a player as well, because even if you give me credit here, like all I did was like point out things I didn't like. You know, like a lot of it was you built the team and then made some tweaks here and there based on feedback, you know, like I thought it was a good team.
It was really, really, really helpful. And I think you know, it sucks that game 3 kind of went how it did in terms of the RNG.
Dude, so many games this week were just
critical
hit to KO last year.
It certainly was a fun thing to watch, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it was fun to play. I still say I think it was a deserved win in your favor, but it's still being on the receiving end of it. It's like it can be a bit painful, can't it?
Yep. I know how you feel, Matrix.
Just my final thoughts of it, because we spent a lot of time on this on our fixture. The 3 best pieces of tech I thought you brought that I saw was the Circle Throw Kangaskhan, the Assault Vest on Zapdos, and Protect on Venusaur. I think Protect on Venusaur over something like Sleep Powder or a 4th coverage move, it was just the right move for this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And so. I think but here's the thing is like I think you also prepped really, really well, and and this is kind of spoilers for when we start rearranging things a little bit. I still have you as my number 1 team. I think this week you got like I think you misplayed a few times, and I think if you hadn't misplayed, you would have 100% won. And I guess, you know, we all have our off weeks, but I still think you have like probably the best like full team in the like lineup of Pokemon that synergize really well in this league. And I also think that just as a player, you have so much experience in draft league. So I still think you're my number 1, but and I think that if we were to go to playoffs and like I were to fight you there, I still think you'd probably beat me at that point. So I think this win was definitely an upset, and we should call it that. Like I'm not just like, you know, I don't think I was a dark horse here. I don't think I'm like suddenly better than
you were one of my top 3 teams, so
right. But I just think it's worth pointing out that I think that this was definitely like the right you know, the perfect storm kind of came for me during this match, and like I had prepped really well. I had help with my prep, which was obviously incredibly helpful. And like yeah, I think that I also think that like out of all the players, and I think I mentioned this to you, like I kind of know you the one of the most, I guess. Like, and then we've worked together since the beginning of the last like season 1 of UGA. And so like I kind of think that if there was anyone to beat you, I feel like I had a pretty decent shot at it. Not to say that like I would always beat you, but like you
know some of my plays better than most.
Yeah. And I was able to think about that.
It is what it is, and I'm looking forward to mixing up my team for when we next fight.
Oh yeah,
because I have plenty of different mons that can match up well. So
Weakness
moving on from
policy.
yes, moving on from our matchup, we spent a long time there. We don't actually have a video for this one, so it's kind of hard to talk about. We got the Lily Cove Lichen Rocks versus the Amateur Alchemies. The Alchemies won 2-0, and I'm pretty sure it was a dominant win by Lapras. Lapras G-Max
Yeah.
just went to town.
Stats.
I'm pretty sure the Alchemies brought Speed Swap Raichu with Lapras once again. And this is I remember now. This matchup was weird because of the Lichen Rocks so well needed a Magnezone for this matchup, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
That's
they
one of the
never-
things that we talked about
Yeah,
a lot.
and they never brought it.
last week.
They didn't bring Magnezone, and outside of Raichu, Magnezone would have done so much for him. Did he bring one of his Intimidate users, Landorus?
Landers, yes.
See, that's the thing.
Yeah,
if it
Landorus,
brought
I think.
Landorus, I can understand why it came because it's got rock moves for the two mons, and it could also like deal with the Raichu, and you pair that with a Magnezone, it's doing pretty well. But
Yeah.
there's no Magnezone to back that up, and honestly, the Alchemies in their prep was at one point considering, I think, weakness policy mixed Lapras, so it was still using like its Hydro Pumps, its Ice Beams, its Thunderbolts, but was going to also run Drill Run. I think it gets as its physical move just to deal with a Magnezone.
And that was something we mentioned in our video too.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not much to say there. I think it was a bit of maybe a misprep on the Lily Cove Lichen Rock side and kind of allowed the Alchemies Lapras to just start sweeping. I mean, the Alchemies definitely had a plan for a Magnezone if it came, but it made it that little bit easier, I believe.
Yeah.
I think this is another case of like, obviously, I think based on what I know, Lily Cove Lichen Rocks are new to this kind of a format. And like the thing is like you always just got to prep for the obvious modes, right? Because if you don't prep for the like strong looking thing on the enemy team, like, and you expect them to like bring something different because they expect you to prep for it, like that's just not gonna work out for you, you know? Like you gotta always have an answer to these things because if you don't, right, you just kind of lose. You kind of get a 7-0 Lapras, right? Just kind of sweeping because it's just that strong. You need to be able to pressure it somehow.
Exactly. So I don't think there's much more we can really say about that match. But we move to the Somerville Scraggies versus the Bavarian Landorus, which the Scraggies took 2-1. I honestly don't really remember this match. So if anyone else has something to say about it, go for it.
I thought this was my match of the week because I really liked watching Tyler's commentary.
Yes.
While he was playing. Essentially,
I remember the blunder.
Right. So yes,
We'll
there
get
was
to that.
there was first the blunder when it comes to his Gudra in game 1. He did not understand how Outrage worked. He didn't realize that it was like randomly targeting things. And so he thought he couldn't select. For some reason, it wasn't working because he couldn't select like his target, right? He had to select himself, and so he just didn't do that, and it cost him that game because if that Outrage had gone off, it would have. I mean, I don't know the calcs, but it looked like it was going to kill, as opposed to what he ended up doing, which was like a not very effective move.
Yeah.
But also,
he realized it in game 3. I think he realized and clicked Outrage on himself in game 3 at least. So I think he at least figured it out.
And another thing in game 1 is his Comfey died early, which was something that he took note of. And this is why kind of I enjoyed watching this game, is because I saw sort of like an evolution in his strategy for that game. He took note of the mistakes that he had made and it was like, okay, well, I'm still in a dominant position with this Gudra Max. Clearly, just because of how the game one sort of like ended up, it was like a 1v1 with Gudra and I think Max Urshifu, that like clearly could have gone in his favor. So he realized that, and he's like, I think the Comfey is super important for this Urshifu. He realized that like his win condition
Yes.
was like preserve the Comfey, kill the Urshifu with it,
Yes.
and
This
enable
was game
keep
2, actually.
yeah. So he had that. He expertly used his what's the Pokemon, the leggy grass one.
Oh, to Serena.
Zarina, yeah. Sorry,
Yes,
I
Serena.
mean,
The game's coming back to me now. I thought Serena was a great bring. Yes.
yeah. Excellent switch in with the Zarina to block Sableye from disrupting the Gudra, right? I think it was
Yeah.
Wisp. So blocks Prankster because it has its Queenly Majesty ability, which
And
blocks
all of
priority moves.
Sableive's moves that match, I think, were prankster boosted moves. I don't think he brought
Yeah.
any attacking.
They were
No
all
attack.
status moves, and I think that was a kind of a mistake in prepping, especially against a team that's got a mon that stops priority moves. If you're going against a team with like Psychic Terrain or Queenly Majesty, or when Brooks just gets reintroduced and gets Dazzling, you can't bring a mon with just priority moves in these type of matchups, because you don't want to be in a situation where your mon just doesn't do anything.
Right.
Exactly. And so I guess sort of final thoughts. The next 2 games were fairly dominant on on the side of Somerville Scraggies. And I think it's 100% because of that like really nice understanding of what to do, right? Really
Mhm.
cool like adaptation throughout the game to just kind of like check with himself to understand like, okay, I need to preserve the Comfey here, and I need to I see that the Sableye is out. I can switch into my Zarina very safely
Comfortably.
here.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. So I just think that's super super cool, and like really interesting to watch, kind of like real time him learning and realizing what he has to do. So props to him. I think another potential dark horse candidate for this
So,
league.
yeah, so Tyler is relatively new to Draft League. I think this is his 3rd league that he's been in now. He's still finishing his 2nd. I played him in his 1st league, and that's where I know him from. And he's very good at learning from the matches he plays. He makes such an effort to figure out what he's done, where he can improve, and all these little things. And he's very good at it. And he's very good at realizing it during the matches he's playing. And I think that although he's inexperienced or is still learning the game, Draft League, um, it makes him such a strong player.
Yeah,
And I
100%.
think,
It's very
sorry,
no, sorry. I was just saying it makes it scary to play against him.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think he's the type who can have a subpar team or a really great team and use them both quite effectively. And it's not just implementing his own plans, but reacting to his opponent's plan in the moment. And I think that's kind of an important quality that a coach in Draft League needs, especially in a best of 3 format where it's all about this information gathering. And he makes sure to utilize the information and conserve his own information to the best of his ability. And I think this is why Somerville Scraggies are getting these victories over teams like the Cromaca Colossals, the Bavarian Landorus, which are quite strong looking teams, but he's able to adapt well enough in the moment to overcome them.
And obviously, like, good prep as well, just
Oh yeah,
because
sure.
he's giving himself the tools to be able to react um, efficiently. And I think going back to what I said in an earlier uh, discussion of the matches, we're at a point in our league where it's really important to understand your team and how it functions, um, in like interconnectedly. You need to understand how each Pokemon's role is. And I thought he demonstrated that really well with this match, especially with the Zarina switch. Knowing that his Gudra was such a monster and like everything else there is just there to sort of like play, you know, uh, keeper against the enemy. Just kind of
Mhm.
like keep the Gudra safe and alive and enable it to just sweep.
So, yeah, and sweep it did. So that's the that we spent a lot of time here actually talking about the week 3 results, but there was so many intense matches and
Yeah.
so much to go into with all of them. So,
This
um,
league is really getting to be pretty exciting, I think.
yeah, definitely. Like I'm loving all the content that's coming out from it, all the matches, and it allows for us to be able to do this deep dive into the matches and talk about them, and it's really enjoyable. So we move on from the week 3 results, and we'll basically quickly just have a look at the leaderboard for the week 3. Um, so the South Croydon Swords are sitting at the top on a 3-0 perfect score without dropping a single set. This is followed by the only other undefeated team, the Amateur Alchemies, which have lost maybe one set, I believe, but still sitting pretty strong. I'm currently placed in third with a 2-1 score now, +3 win record. And you, Oddball, are just sat behind me in fourth, just having lost one extra set, but are tied in sets with the Charlotte Beagles in fifth with Bryan, with but the Oshawots have a slightly higher kill KD record, which is why they're above Bryan, and again why they're both above the Dark Lord Greninjas as the KD, which isn't shown here. The Dark Lord Greninjas make their first appearance into the top 6.
Congratulations to them as well.
Yeah,
Good
definitely.
showing.
Deserving. So this is how it stands. We've got 4 regulars. Well, it's 3 weeks in, but I suppose we can call them regulars at this point. So from 1 through 4, and then Bryan made his way back up into the top 6 this week with his win. So it's good to have him back up here.
Very good.
Hope I would imagine, depending on how that first match would have been for you, Masenko, I would imagine you'd be quite likely to be up in here as well.
Yeah, well,
But
You
you've got a game in
replayed
hand
that,
at the
don't
moment.
you?
sorry, Oddball, what did you say?
You replay that this long week, don't you?
No,
Or-
I'm still waiting for the
Oh.
make a break. I wanted to take a nice break from my intense prepping that I do.
Yeah, all this prep for me took it out of him.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't want to get too burnt out on this, so I think waiting until the
Okay,
makeup
yeah.
is good.
It's fine.
A good
It's
idea.
That's all right.
It's only one match anyway. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think you've got a game in hand, so it's kind of hard to rank this against you and the Ag Slash Blades, as both of you are 1-1. So who knows? You two
Matters
could be breaking the
final
top
rank,
6.
you know?
Exactly. This is just a fun little look into where we stand at the moment. So
Mhm.
this was the power rankings that we gave out last week as of the end of week 2. Now we are going to have a quick discussion here as to where we think the week 3 rankings are, and this is where I've got it set at the moment. But obviously, we can run through at the moment. I still believe, starting from the bottom, we leave at least these 2 unchanged.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
have those as my well, I have Lily Cove as my bottom one. For just my scoring system, the London Lucarios are a bit higher just because I think their team has a lot of good tools. Even if it's not even if it's only one strategy. But I do agree, like in practice, they are not past 15th right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Oddball?
I almost want to swap the two, especially after not bringing Magnazone against the Alchremies this week. It's just there are some choices like in prep that are somewhat obvious, I guess. Whereas like London Lucarios, they have a game plan and they're trying to figure out maybe how to expand beyond that. They got
Yeah.
redirection recently, and who knows, they might be up for another trade sometime. But
Has Cove made any trades yet?
I don't think so.
No,
Yeah,
I
and I think
don't
that's-
even know if he's even paying attention to the doc or anything like that, to be quite honest.
Yeah,
That's fair.
so
I do agree with what you're saying there, Oddball. At least the Lucarios are appearing to make more of an effort in bettering their game plans than what the Lily Coves are.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying there. So
mhm.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, so I've got the Aggie/Blade still at 14th, and now the reason for that, and I believe they stay there, in my opinion, is
I agree.
because they've got a win, yes, but it was against a team that basically flopped their prep. Let's be honest. If that Comfey hadn't have been triage, it probably would have been a lot more work. And I just still have yet to see anything from them, you know?
yeah.
That really shows off their team. So I still think it's ranked here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had pretty solid prep against me as well, in our first week. But I also think like it was the first week, so I'm still getting to know my team, and I think I was also in the process of already starting to make a bunch of trades. So really my team wasn't like full power at that point, and like just kind of yeah, like I think I had an off week that week for the most part. I thought he was good though. I thought he did prep well, and I thought he adapted well, even if the games didn't didn't really count. So I guess we'll see. But yeah, I would agree with the data that we have at least that we're allowed to use for these rankings. I'd say he's still probably around 14th.
hmm So
Seems
I've got the Greninjas at 13th at the moment, and this I know they've won. I know they're officially inside the top 6. I still don't like Katana and Rain. I think it's a mode that they're trying to make work, but just in theory doesn't work. I mean, I've told you, Litten inside Rain can KO AB Katana. So
yeah.
I appreciate the team is good. I do like some of the aspects of the team, and yes, they played really well this week. So I am up for them moving up. I just don't know where I could see them moving up to.
I think that an important part is just like how much they have quite apparently grown play wise and prep wise. Like week 1, watching the video back, it was protect choice bands Kartana, and like I don't know if that was an accident or something, but you go up 2 weeks later and they're like switching out their Kartana, saving it for like a late game like a late game planned in order to win the game. And I almost think that's that's exactly what I would have done.
His skill set is definitely has probably the fastest growth I've seen in this, and at least in our division so far.
I would agree.
I'm not happy with that. I actually kind of do agree with you here. I think that he could actually realistically move up to our 10th spot.
Yeah, I might maybe an argument for even higher, honestly. But let's think about that in just a little bit. There, Crim Colossals, I do think are number 13 at this point.
Yeah, I do think the Colossals have been lacking on their game plan and prep, but I think that's mainly because of not having time to do the prep at the moment, because obviously we've heard inside the chats he's been doing a lot of like the lambing, the goats, and everything like that.
He's an actual life outside of Pokemon.
Exactly. So I do think that's had an impact on some of his games. However, we have to take into consideration how he's performed in the games and his and what his results show. and ultimately it shows a strongish team not really performing to the point with which you'd expect.
I mean, the monkey did get a kill.
I mean, the monkey did get a kill. You are correct here. I think that should be an instant number one.
Yeah.
I think we put him off the board entirely, like
He's on a
negative
tier.
one, you know?
Yeah. So I think the Colossals, unfortunately, have to be moved down to 13th for this week's ranking, which I believe is a real big shot down from where they were 6th last week. But
Mhm.
it's a second week where they could have won, but I just don't think their prep and execution was quite there.
Yeah.
So then we got
I'd like
sorry.
I'd like to make an argument to switch Merseyside and Cardiff.
Okay.
I think that the Merseyside Marowaks, even though they performed poorly in terms of like, I think in execution, their plan kind of fell flat because they got spooked out of using the Glastrier. I do think that their prep was pretty good, and they did have a good chance at winning that first match and potentially more against these Luxrays, which I think is pretty impressive.
The only discrepancy I have is that the Cardiff Commanders won their match this week, and they've already been moved down from 10th to 11th, and that's off a win. I mean, admittedly, it was against the London Lucarios, but the other issue I have with the Merseyside Marowaks is that it's the second week in a row where they've made a blunder in either like timing out or move select, like through selection of team, move selection, and just like faltering away from what their game plan is. And I feel like it's just that built up inconsistencies with what they've brought and actually executing. That's kind of just
I feel like
putting them down.
yeah.
So go
I feel
ahead.
like an
Sorry,
important part. Yeah, absolutely, that's fine. I feel like an important part here between these two is just consistency. Like, yeah, you might have had good prep like this week, and maybe that critical hit spooked you out of it, but there should be no reason that if you were in an extraordinarily comfortable situation where you could have won and you had a 1/16th chance of losing, like I don't see why you should reasonably be scared of bringing your arguably most powerful Mon back into the matchup. And I think it's a problem of prioritizing what's important in your match, because you prepped well, but you didn't utilize your well-made prep, I guess.
Execution.
Yeah.
You got to execute.
Yeah. Whereas the Cardiff Kamalas, maybe they don't have as good prep or as notable prep that might be mentioned here. They have just been, consistent. They've got the wins that they needed to. Probably learned from their loss. And yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a good spot for them at 11 and 12 respectively.
I take back my suggestion. I agree after discussing it a little bit more. But I think that once again, this is a chance for the Merseyside Marowaks to rise in the standings. He seems to have good prep. He has a very good team, I'd argue, especially with some of the trades that he's made.
Sure.
And so I think my advice, if he's listening, would be to just go on Showdown and just play like Pokemon, like get comfortable enough with the game so that you understand like different scenarios and different decisions. Just get a better understanding of the game flow,
I also, building on from that, I think he needs to familiarize himself with the mons he's got in this draft and learn what they can do.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue is that he is inconfident in his own knowledge of what each mon that he's drafted can do. And I think
that goes for modes in general. Like, I don't think I've seen him comfortably use like Trick Room yet.
Exactly.
and that's a very powerful mode of his that I would like to see going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Part of my prep that I do is to just like go on Showdown with whatever team I'm bringing, even if it's like very specifically geared towards, say Matrix's team. Like there were so many games
For
I had
sure.
on Showdown where I wish I had Fake Out on my Kangaskhan, right? But like even if you're losing those games, it's still really, really important that you play out a little bit and test it because like understanding certain synergies and like interactions between moves and speed tiers and all that kind of stuff, you kind of get you don't have to like overthink it during the game at that point. It's kind of just muscle memory at that point. If you know your team really well, you can kind of just like know what a good switch in is, how much damage they're going to really be taking from something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that an important thing there is you can do that in one of two ways. You can calc it all out and you can like know exactly what's going to hit for blah 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 amount of investment, or like you said, like you can play the game and feel it out. And I think that that is kind of an important thing for the Merseyside Marowaks to do, because even though they have that good prep and probably have the calcs and stuff behind it, just that gameplay is something that can be improved, and it will take you extraordinarily far, especially with your team.
Yeah, and I, for one, I'm glad I've already faced them by the time that they do get rolling.
Oh man, when do I face them? I think I faced them like week 7.
Ooh.
I don't.
And the Cardiff Kamalas, yes, their only win has been against the London Lucarios thus far, but they have had some difficult matchups, in my opinion, against what are currently ranked team number 2 and team number 3 up here.
I'm facing them week 8, Merseyside.
Yeah. So I think the Cardiff Kamalas have had some tough opening week matches. Had a nice win this week, and hopefully they get into the groove of things a little bit moving forwards.
I'm against Oddball and Dragon my last 2 weeks. So
I've got Tyler my last week.
So I opened with Matrix and the South Croydon Soars, and I end with Oddball and Dragon, so that'll be fun.
So I think the Dark Lords Greninjas are fine being at 10th. That is a shoot up from where they were last week, which was 14th. And I think that's a reasonable, because they've definitely shown signs of improvement. And if he keeps going on like he is doing, I think he could, as you say, make playoffs quite comfortably. So moving from that, we got number 9, and I at the moment have put Bavarian Landorus here in number 9, and I think it's because they were in 7th last week, but I liked. They've got a very strong team, yet I think they've only got the one win.
Yeah.
Against the Southeast Luxrays, I believe it was, but they lost to Somerville Scraggies this week, didn't they? And
yeah, and I think every single game has been 1-2, even their victory.
Yeah, I don't know if they are a 9th ranked team, but
it's interesting to see how he uses his team, because I know from the match that I remember against the Southeast Luxrays, it was extraordinarily peculiar. Like Dynamax Latias game 1, like Ally Swish Wigglytuff.
Oh
with,
yeah.
Like I don't even know.
Sorry, I had a call, but I'm back now.
You're fine. Like it's a good team, but the good members aren't really showing up as much as maybe I'd like to see them show up,
But I remember him using that Charizard, the standard mode in week 1, and it got absolutely shut down. And then he started to branch out into his other modes a little bit more, which is good, which is what you want him to be able to be diverse. But I feel like I remember Carmen saying last week that his community, the community he's come from, their type of prep is a little bit out there. It can be, but that's what's scary about it.
Mhm.
However, I'm yet to see that force to be reckoned with, if you get me.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's missing this impact in his matches.
It's
And
mistakes, right? Like he doesn't bring a attack move on the Sableye this week, and he's against a Zarina, right? Like that's not like that's not like a good that's a really, really bad mistake, like in my opinion, in
yeah,
terms of prep. That just seems like such an obvious to me. And I don't know if this seems a little harsh, I'm sorry, but like yeah, that just seems like that's a huge blunder in your prep, right? If you see that they have literal like priority denial built into their team, and then you don't bring anything on your prankster Sableye that could actually do anything outside of that, like, and then you're also leading that and like expecting to do things with it. I just don't see how that, that's like something you really, really have to um,
I
be ready for.
understand that like it can have other prankster moves on it, like Sunny Day and stuff like that, and they still work. But if it was a prankster mon like Riolu say, and you brought all prankster moves on that, at least like Riolu has prankster coaching, which can be used on your partner regardless of the prankster the priority denial on the opponent's side. So if you wanted to use like all status moves, then I can't remember Sableye's moveset, but if it had something that could boost his or influence his teammates with that prankster, then that's understandable not bringing an attack move because at least it's always doing something.
Did they bring the Latias this week? I have to go check.
I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it doesn't look like they did. Oh, yes, they did. They just didn't bring it in any of their matches. Okay. So that I think that's a huge deal as well, right? I think like maybe even Wigglytuff. Did they bring Wigglytuff? They did bring Wigglytuff and they used it. Interesting. Okay. Well, here's the thing. I just think that like they didn't have like a really strong answer to this Gudra this week. And I think that like even though they brought the Latias and the Wigglytuff, I guess it wasn't really geared towards beating it. They didn't really use the Latias, so I don't really know exactly. But I imagine you could do something like Thwacky with like knockoff and to knock off the assault vest, and then Latias can follow up or something like that.
I think something that would have been good would have been a physical Charizard.
Yeah, that too
I
potentially.
think Tyler was a little bit worried at one point, like, "Oh, is this a physical Charizard? Because that could be bad." Because Gudra's base defense is like 70, and that's mediocre. It dies to certain moves that are strong. And like if you had a boosted Charizard, say with physical drag max Wormwind, well, one that's reducing Gudra's attack, and two, it's doing damage. So
If you bring it with Blaze, instead of solar power, like because obviously the solar power only works for your special attack, right? And like you give this focus sash or something, like you can hit really hard with this Charizard.
yeah,
Um,
I don't know. But moving from that, we've got the Somerville Scraggies at 8. They've moved up a lot this week from 12, and I think deservedly so. I think they finally got to show off what their team can do now that they actually remembered to bring Triage on Comfy.
Yeah.
And I
Agreed.
think they'll only increase in rank from here.
They'll break into the top, row of this
Oh, for sure, for sure.
at some point. Yeah.
And the only reason why I didn't put them at 7 is because of Bioptic's game. I thought
Right.
I know Bioptic has only got one win, but I feel like he's been missing out each week. And
Yeah.
this week it finally paid off where he had good prep. He got lucky, but he deserved a little bit of luck based on the past 2 weeks. And that second game, the way he executed it was great. I think it's fully deserving of being where he is, considering he's only got the one win.
definitely. I not much to say more on my end. I just think that he once again, I still think he's a really strong team, really good player, and he'll find his way if he just keeps trying. Like this team can go all the way. Like I like his team so much.
Yeah. It's nice to see him get a win fairly early into the season as well, after last season.
Agreed.
So at the moment I've got you, Masenko, at 6 because it was the first game where we got to really see your team shine with your prep. Because obviously you've only played the 2 matches so far that are official. And I feel like you were really unlucky with that first week. Sorry?
My 2 matches that I've actually played were against the first and second place players. So
Yes, exactly. And I think you've had strong outings in both, more so in this last week, in my opinion. I felt like your prep was a lot better for your matchup in this last week. A lot more effective at doing and so it allowed you to make better plays and have a better overall game. So I think that ranking you at number 6 is justifiable.
I feel weird placing myself usually, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Seems fine to me.
Would you agree with this, Oddball?
I might. I actually didn't see the Charlotte Beadles match this week, but I would maybe consider putting them above. But like you said, I mean, it's been 2 matches, 1 win, 1 loss. I just think that they had that Leaf Storm not missed, you take it 2-0, against number 2 ranked player. And another thing is yes, there were a little bit of hacks both ways, but you managed to play around it and take that loss in game 2 and still go on and win game 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think your reads were good as well. And I really think that for playing against the currently top-rated teams, you have performed exceedingly well. Whereas maybe the Charlotte Beadles got an 8-0 sweep on the London Lucarios, you almost got a 2-0 win against the Welsh Whalelords, but at the same time, it's 2 weeks, instead of the 3 that we can judge everyone else off.
I have time to climb up in the rankings if it
yeah,
really,
for sure.
Exactly.
I think 6.
Yeah. It's really close to where I think you should be placed right now, and I'm excited to see what you plan and prep for next.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think yes, he had a strong showing against my team, which obviously is at the moment ranked pretty high. But it's difficult to say with a game that could have swung either way, if not for 1 or 2 things that were out of both of our control. So, but wherefore the Charlotte Beadrills this week, per se, their win against the Colossals, which are amongst the division ranked pretty high in their overall strength. I just feel like the way that they controlled their game, the 2 games that they've won, and yes, one of them was against the London Lucarios, but still, other teams have won against the Lucarios with taking a few, being knocked out a few times, but they didn't. They was basically an 8-0 sweep. They denied completely, and then this week they denied the Crummer Colossals and kept control in both games. So I think it just edges out a little bit more at the moment. But we're getting to the top 6, and they're all very close. So
I absolutely agree. I think that there's competition between maybe the top, almost all of the top 6 right now. All of them
definitely
could be kind of striving for first, second, and third here. But I think as of right now, that Charlotte Beach is at 5th and Jazzy Jake is also at 6th is
fair for now.
Accurate, yeah. and there's plenty of time, like you said. There's plenty of time to move up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
got the Oshawots at 4th at the moment. I know that they was second last week, and this was a little bit difficult to place these top 4 because I think that they are so close.
I think this is all
You
like looking at this top 4, this is exactly what I think the standings would show that is the case, right? You know, the South Croydon Soars beat me and I beat you, so therefore South Croydon Soars must be number 1, right? Or like, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
a lot of this like is very like on paper, this looks really nice. And I think we should keep it this way. I think this is correct for now. But I do
Mhm.
want to point out a couple things. The first thing I want to point out is I still think that you're number 1 in the league. I said this before the call, before the recording, but I still think that even though you had this upset week, I still think that your team wins out against SCS most of the time. I think definitely one of the most dominant players in the league. And I think even though the South Croydon Soars certainly have shown to be insanely good, I think that they deserve, like, I think they'll probably be number 2 when all things kind of, when the dust settles in the future. And I also think that the Alchemies are higher rated right now than I think that they will be in the future as well. Even though they've had such dominant wins.
They also, yeah, that's something I wanted to mention. Like they've played sub 10 ranked, or like above 10 ranked, I guess. Like let me check.
They played the Lux Rays, the Kamalas, and the Lycanrocs.
Yeah, which is in current rank 12, 11, and 15 respectively.
Right. That like
whereas every
next,
other one of the top ones have played like at least one of each other.
Yeah.
and especially next week, Matrix, you're against Dragon, and I think what we'll see, and this is my prediction, we'll obviously talk about the matchup later, is I think that you're going to be the first person to really punish the team's weaknesses, which I think exist, and haven't been exploited yet. And I won't like go into detail about what I think those are, just because obviously I don't want to like
I need
sway
to
any,
win.
you know, sway anything any which way. But I do think that like those weaknesses are there and probably should be shored up at some point by Dragon. But right now, I think like any of the top teams in the top, you know, even top 8 probably could definitely beat Dragon with his current team. That's my
Yeah, I can see that.
I also find the current ranking interesting simply because like yes, you know, I lost 2-0 to the South Croydon Soars, but it wasn't a dominant game at all. You know, like quite the opposite. Like I would consider myself likely to have beat them had RNG not said no, not this week, you know. But another thing is, yeah, and like that, but it's also difficult to say like I should move up at all because you know Alchemies are undefeated as far as total sets. South Croydon Soars are undefeated even if it was closer than it may seem on surface level. And then, well, I don't know. I might.
So
2 and 3, I might consider swapping, but.
All right. Well, why don't we move on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've got so as it stands, we've got the week 2 from last week, and you can see the shifts here. There's been a few shifts around. Basically, I think every team's moved at least one space on the. Oh, except for the Beedrills. The Beedrills have stayed at 5th.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, I think is pretty fair because they were, despite having a loss last week type thing, they stayed at 5th, and then they got quite a dominant win. But it's hard to really move them up above the top 4. So at the moment. Okay, so we move on to the week 4 predictions.
Woo-hoo.
And we can't really say too much about this first one, which is the London Lucaris versus the Bavarian Landorus. And that's because I believe the match has already been played. Yo, guys. So just cutting in here at the end of the part 1, the recording went on a lot longer than I initially planned for, so I've decided to split this week's rankings into part one, which as you'll have all seen was the analysis of like post-week analysis. I will be posting a second video later with basically continuing the discussion on the predictions for next week and also going into some of the trades suggestions that we think each team could possibly be making. Hope to catch you over there soon, and thank you guys for listening so far.